Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Going to talk about the period of the equinox, which is a really, really beautiful time of the year. We have it happen twice. So the first one is on the 21st of March, which is when the sun ingresses into Aries, and the next one is on the usually 21st, 22nd of September. That varies. It happens to be on the 23rd of September for the Southern Hemisphere this year, and it'll be the 22nd for you guys in the Northern Hemisphere. So I'm going to make this a pretty short video. I just felt inspired to come and share just some things to consider, because it is a really beautiful time, and despite how, I suppose, how negative and how challenging and troubling the world is at the moment, this is still an incredibly powerful energy that speaks into a lot of different layers, actually. I'll bring up the chart in a moment because I do want to just touch on a few things relative to what that chart shows as well. But the first thing I guess we need to start with is the equinox just simply reflects, and not only reflects, but literally is a phenomena that describes equal day and equal night. So hence the word equinox, right? This energy really is it's an equalizing energy is what it is. Okay? It's because we live in a world of duality, and therefore we live in a world of opposites, of polarities in every sense of the word. Within that is, at the core, is the experience and the witnessing of day, night, male, female, yin, yang, feminine, masculine. So this energy of equal day, equal night, you could say, is a beautiful harmonizing, equalizing, and balancing of these two polarities, which we witness in our life every single day. Doesn't matter where we look, it's the polarities are everywhere. So we're talking about stepping into an energy at this time of the year where this perception and concept and experience that we have in terms of polarities, in terms of day and in terms of night, in terms of the feminine and the masculine. Well, when we look at the equinox, it's literally a point where the day and night have become equal. So we're dealing with these energies that we constantly experience in our everyday life in a position where they are truly balanced and harmonized, equalized at this point in time. And, look, I think this is very significant relative to the world events that are going on at large. We know that there are, large cycles influencing what's happening in the world, relative to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, the Jupiter lining up with those energies. We had Jupiter go direct a few days ago. In about a week or so, Saturn goes direct, and then about a week after that, Pluto goes direct. In about 4 weeks' time, we have Mercury going retrograde. So there's this constant flux of shift of energy and direction, and obviously each body, meaning each planet or asteroid for that matter, is going to speak to the matter that's either being turned within or being expressed outside. So within all of that, there is always this experience of polarity, duality, day-night, feminine, masculine, yin-yang, and largely which actually resides within us, because everything resides within us, actually. I was reminded of something really quite powerful. I was just watching Rupert Spira talking about dreams, death, and reality, and just the different states of consciousness, you could say. So in the mainstream, people tend to think of, let me see if I can paraphrase what he said. We often think about ourselves as, you know, who we are, a person, we think about um, the daylight, the experience around us as something that we perceive, and anything outside of that and beyond that seems unreal to us. It doesn't seem as though it's real. It seems like it's um, you know, fantasy or a dream or unrealistic or whatever it may be, because we have this point, you know, of focus relative to where we stand as a human being, which is our personality and our ego. And so we have this experience through our daily life, which is created by form and matter, that enables us to identify, you know, what's going on. But we perceive that as the ultimate truth, that this external reality is what governs actually what's going on. And so he throws that model on its head and pretty much describes that, in fact, it's consciousness first and foremost, and consciousness, you know, creates a mind, as it were, which subsequently creates the form and the matter and the experiences that we have. So it's kind of like the reverse. And what he was really getting at with that is that when you're talking about the sleep state, not talking about a deep, deep sleep state, because even in the dream state, the mind is very active, right? Whereas when you go into a very deep, deep trance-like state or sleep state, that's where pure consciousness is, and there is no form, there is no matter, there's nothing. It's hard for our left brain to understand. But anyway, I was reminded of that because I was watching that clip today, and it is important relative to what I'm discussing, because we identify so strongly with form and matter that it becomes the primary lens that we look through in order to find meaning or definitions, or to try and understand what's going on. But if we were to, and this really comes from, you could say, the Virgo-Pisces polarity. We did just have a new moon in Virgo, so this is very important from that level as well, which I discussed this in the new moon in Virgo video. It's that point of, you know, Virgo connecting to the earth, to the practical reality, form, matter, what we create with our mind, our thoughts, and our actions, of course. And then the opposite to that, which is completely letting go of form and matter and just stepping into the abyss, stepping into the unknown, stepping into where you have no control, where there is no form, where there are no boundaries, where you can't control anything. So to completely surrender and let go and step into that. So again, because we live in a world of polarities and duality, and we are constantly experiencing that or are confronted by that, particularly from the way our mind works and the way we perceive things, we have this, you know, really strong sort of awareness, if you like, of the conflicts that exist, obviously, in the narrative of the world, right? But I think when we have an equinox period, then this is a really powerful opportunity for us to step into a space within ourselves where this inner feminine, inner masculine, the yin and the yang can possibly be aligned, you know, in a much more harmonious and balanced way. Now, you know, we can take this a step further, because we're equating it to equal day and equal night. And we know that the dark energy, the dark forces exist. We also know that the light forces and the light energy exist as well. And the philosopher Rudolf Steiner has written extensively about this and made some really interesting points. And what he said was that both light and dark are equally illusory. They're both illusions, actually. And one way of understanding that, I suppose, is to put it in real practical terms. you have certain people that are really attracted to the darker shades of life, and that involves a number of different activities or actions or desires. And then you have a number of people that might be attracted to the light, that is more Neptune, right? So one's sort of Pluto and one's Neptune, if we can relate it back to those planetary forces. But the reason that the light component, which is typically women are more attracted to the light type of components of experience. This is just a general comment, it's a generalization. Of course, there are exceptions. And men are more typically attracted to the darker sort of shades of life, right? But in the light side of things as well comes the aspect of glamour, for instance, the lights and the glamour and the beauty and the external sort of appearance of things in a light sort of way still, but they are still some form of illusion, right? And he went further then to say that it's really about getting into a space that it's like the middle ground between the dark and the light, right? And here we are at the equinox point where we have these two components that pretty much describe everything in our world. We have them at a point at this time of the year where they are equally balanced and harmonized. And so he says that the middle ground is actually called the Christ force. Now, you don't have to be a Christian to ascribe to this notion. The Christ force is, it's the most simplest way to describe it is, some people call it, Christ consciousness, for instance. It's literally the middle ground, and it's everything. It's basically how can I say this? It's the middle ground is what everything else isn't. It's very Neptune. So it's like, for example, when you go into deep processes of transformation where there is no form and thought, that's the middle ground, because you're not identifying with the dark or with the light. You're literally in that Christ force energy. So this is why meditation practices, and I know many of you have these journeys in your life and have these practices in your life. For these reasons, these sorts of practices are incredibly powerful, because by our very nature as human beings, we have a tendency to polarize everything, and to identify with the dark or with the light, sometimes more with the dark or sometimes more with the light. But the point being that they're both illusory at the end of the day in terms of ultimate truth. So this equinox period then is a very powerful force just for our own personal journey and experience, enabling us to acquire within ourselves a more equalizing and balanced state relative to this dark and light, this inner feminine or inner masculine, the yin, the yang, because many people are either, really masculine or really feminine. There's not many of us that really have that inner feminine, inner masculine, yin yang, totally balanced out, as it were. We're always trying to achieve that in some kind of way. Well, at least a lot of us are. So the point is that when we have an equinox period, there's something that happens in the ether of the earth, because the sun ingressing into 0 degrees Libra, that's what this point of equinox is, just as it was on the 21st of March when the sun ingresses into Aries. So it's the solar journey, right, through the zodiac that creates these phenomena, these points, which create the equinoxes and the solstices, for instance. And the equinox, as I said, is equal day, equal night. And when you take it back to the symbolism, which is the feminine, the masculine, dark, light. And so here they are at a point only at these times of the year where they are totally balanced and equalized. And so this is something that we ourselves can tap into, tune into, relative to our own inner light and inner darkness, inner feminine, inner masculine, and just finding some, I mean, at the highest point, of course, it's finding the middle ground, which is the Christ force. So it's a very powerful energy, just simply for those reasons. Now, there are other reasons as well. Other people could, add things to this and say more and so forth. But this was what I wanted to share today, and just to encapsulate in just a few words. And I guess because at the moment, what seems to be happening on the earth plane seems quite dark in a lot of ways. And it is, but it is also a rebalancing of energies. Things need to be rebalanced. The scales need to kind of tip over, as it were, because they've just gone too far that way or too far that way. And I've said this through many videos throughout this year. So I think when we reach an equinox point, there's a real heightened sense of this particular energy relative to things equalizing and balancing out more. And sometimes for things to really balance out, the conflict and the polarities and the contrasts come through quite strongly, which can be quite shocking. And that just correlates to esoteric astrology, where the earth plane is basically, it connects to ray number 4, which is harmony through conflict. And so we are seeing a lot of conflict now, which will ultimately result to harmony, but it's not happening fast enough for many of us. I can completely understand that. But what we do need to understand is that these types of phenomena and shifts that occur are very precisely divinely timed. They're not happening by chance, that they're not insignificant. They connect to much bigger things that we can't even see or even really understand at the moment. So we shouldn't really take anything for granted. But I guess, I mean, from my position, I take great comfort in knowing that whilst there seems to be a lot of darkness and chaos and conflict at the moment, the positive side to that is that a lot of things are being exposed that have been hidden, for a very long time. That's one level of it. And that will subsequently be corrected as a result of it being revealed and seen. Because when something is seen, that's been hidden for such a long time, then people have responses and reactions to that, and that creates the necessary change. It might create a lot of conflict in the interim, and it clearly is, but ultimately what will come is more balance, more peace, and more harmony. But we need it's like the earth's been, it's sort of shaped, she's sort of like having a little dance, and her arms are just kind of flying around everywhere, a bit like the goddess Kali or the goddess Durga, who have 8 arms. And so, the earth, she's just shaking herself, right? And this shaking is bringing up all the debris on the earth that's been hidden for a long time, relative to certain countries or certain governments or certain peoples and so forth, in terms of their behaviors and ulterior motives and intentions and so forth. So even though things seem quite dark still, things will be further revealed. And as I said, because things are being revealed, certain reactions and responses and actions and so forth will create the necessary change. We just have to be patient, and we just have to remember that there is a bigger plan in store here, and it's beyond the powers that we see or don't see relative to humanity on the earth plane. It doesn't matter how powerful a particular group of people or country or government or whoever think they are relative to their level of power due to money or status or whatever it may be. The ultimate source creation to all things is the ultimate power. So we just kind of need to remember that, and that the plan is going as it needs to go. It's going perfectly well, and that will be important because there will be many people that will continue to ascribe to the old reality, and there are many people that have already taken the shift to the new paradigm that's being created. It's just very difficult to see the new paradigm and what it's going to look like exactly at the moment. So therefore, that provokes a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainty. And again, if we take the model of consensus reality being about 80% of the population, then we can see why there's a lot of struggle or kicking and screaming relative to the consensus reality, really struggling to let go of what needs to die, because there are new timelines, there's a new paradigm, there's a new earth, there's new realities being born. And Ceres, that was she's in Pisces, right? She's traveling in Pisces, and I said this sometime earlier this year, because Ceres is the goddess that correlates to grief and loss, but also renewal, as in transformation. She's on a collective level. Ceres through Pisces has been the process and experience that we're all having relative to what we thought was reality is literally dying, it's decaying. And so many people are feeling a sense of loss or mourning or grieving these losses, which comes back to, the circumstances in people's lives have greatly changed as a result of this COVID-19, right? In the biggest ways ever, right, relative to our lifetime this time round. And so there's the loss and the grief. We're having to have to let go of these old paradigms, these old realities. And so the ones that are able to see the bigger picture and accept, the losses that have come and find some middle ground are the ones that will find or connect with more meaning, that there'll be a meaning to why things are happening the way they are. There's nothing worse than suffering in life and being able to find absolutely no meaning or purpose to that suffering. That's the worst kind of suffering, and that happens to a lot of people because of the lack of understanding, insight, awareness, perhaps lack of compassion that they've had in their life, or lack of love, and lack of validation and so forth. And actually, the word compassion is a very interesting word, because when you break that down, passion comes from the whole thing of Christ. The word passion literally translates to suffering. That's its root meaning. So compassion means to be able to sit with somebody through their suffering. That's what it means when we are being compassionate to somebody, right? That's just a little side note there. So they're the main points about the equinox, and I'll just share my screen and bring up the damn it, that's right, I closed my computer down and because I was having a few glitches. So anyway, I just need to recreate the chart, which will only take a minute or less. So I'm just doing it for Melbourne. So anyway, it was a few hours before this. To be precise, Melbourne time, it was 12:14 a.m. where the sun had ingressed into Libra. Okay, so the other things that I wanted to share as well is that a day before this, about 2 days before this actually, for the day the sun ingresses into Libra, Juno ingressed into Scorpio, right? After having been in Libra for quite a few months, actually, because she went retrograde in Libra. And it is always the case when a planet goes retrograde or an asteroid goes retrograde, it spends a much longer period of time in that sign. It doesn't matter what body it is, it always happens. The only things that don't go retrograde are the sun and the moon, right? So anyway, Juno has ingressed into Scorpio, and she will only be in there for about 2 months, I think. Yeah, it's a couple of months. It's not as long as she was in the sign of Libra. So in the sign of Libra, she took us through a journey where we were able to see all the imbalances in our relationships. Or maybe, starting relationships during that time, or just being more interested in creating, more harmony in our life through our relationships. That could be in professional working relationships as well. So it's been a journey around those sorts of themes. And now that she's ingressed into Scorpio, well, she takes us into the underworld. Scorpio is the underworld, period. So Juno in Scorpio, because Juno, first of all, is the goddess that correlates to partnership, marriage, relationships, and she's the principle of commitment, right? She was committed to Zeus, Jupiter, her husband, regardless of the different difficulties and challenges she went through. So she really represents that process in us relative to what we want to commit to, or who we want to commit to, how much we want to commit to that person or that partnership, whether it's a personal or professional one. What are the challenges around that? So in Scorpio, if we are in a partnership, it could come to an end. That is possible because Scorpio represents the birth and the ending, or the birth and the death. It always carries that tone, that flavor with it, the archetype Scorpio and the planet Pluto. So whenever we have a Pluto transit or something significant in the sign of Scorpio, we have to undergo some transformative process. It can be very big for some people, it can be a bit smaller for others, it just depends, right? Nevertheless, while Juno is in Scorpio for the next couple of months, she will take us through a journey of where we can create much more passion and sexual desire and intensity relative to our partner or the relationship we're in, or we can just become really obsessed with somebody. Or there's so many possibilities, but fundamentally it is a transformative process and journey that we undergo relative to our partnerships and relationships. And it can also be that material, certain things, get exposed during this time, because Scorpio exposes things. That's what Pluto does. That's why the world is being exposed at the moment in so many ways due to this Pluto cycle in Capricorn, right? Which has been there since 2008. And we've just seen slowly, different processes gradually of things crumbling down, systems, Capricorn, reality. So yeah, in Scorpio, we can expect a really intense journey relative to our partnerships. If we are in a partnership, whether it's a personal or professional one, that doesn't necessarily have to be an easy process. It just depends on the nature of your relationship, whether there are things that are not being worked on, or whether things have been hidden and not revealed. This is what Scorpio does. It churns everything, up, and it just brings it up for it to be exposed and seen, right? And I guess, if you're single, then, it's kind of weird. Like, how do you translate that? I guess how I would translate that is I would be looking at, well, which house is Juno moving through? while she's in Scorpio. Which house in your birth chart, in other words, is she transiting through? Because there might be a matter or an issue that comes up that has a partnership basis core to it relative to that house. So it's always best to look at any transiting planet that you are observing. It's always best to look at where is it transiting in your birth chart, because that's going to bring in the level and the domain of the area of your life that this energy is being activated, right? So clearly, if Juno was transiting your 7th or your 8th, that's pure relationship material, So it just depends where she is. If she was transiting your 4th house, it might bring up some partnership issues with certain family members as well. If it's in the 10th house, then it could be, a working partnership relationship where it could be that relationship acts as an advocate for transformation for you in some kind of way, and it's a reciprocal thing. So it's vice versa. It's both people contributing in some kind of way. If we bring in some lower personality kind of aspects to the archetype of Scorpio, then we start bringing in the levels of power struggles, control, manipulation, abuse, possessiveness, jealousy, wanting to dominate, so it just depends. Where are you vibrating? What's your frequency? How aware are you? How are you working with these energies? How in tune are you to bring awareness, into every situation that sort of presents and arises? Now, I think transiting Juno is an important transit, actually. I've seen amazing things happen in people's lives just from transits from Juno. And certainly when you're having a Juno return in your chart, you have a Juno return I think it's every 4 years or something like that. Just like you have a Venus return, you have a Mars return, you have a solar return every year, you have your birthday, that's a solar return. So every planet has a return. And I've seen with Juno returns, one of the most common things I've seen, unfortunately, or fortunately, just depends, is the end of a marriage or a relationship, or people get served divorce papers. I've seen that numerous times. So yeah, we can understand it in a number of different ways, but it is a very deep, intense emotional time with Juno in Scorpio. We're going to go into something quite deeply within ourselves relative to the partnerships that we have in our life, right? And just on this day, there's an exact Venus Vesta conjunction in Leo. And look, that could mean a million different things, honestly speaking. But if there were some things going on in your life right now relative to creativity, for instance, right? Or you were doing a lot of healing work around your heart center, your heart energy, right? Your emotions, your feelings. If you were doing, practices with deep meditations that focus on the chakras, and you're working with the heart chakra, which is Leo, then a Venus Vesta conjunction in Leo is a very powerful symbol for something maybe you have already been cultivating and working on and trying to produce. Well, these days, the day before that day and the day after, where Venus and Vesta in Leo are very close, there can be some powerful breakthrough that comes through relative to heart-centered matters, and that includes creative processes as well. So that could be a particular creative task that you've taken on. Something really important can happen during this time, because Vesta, amongst many things, she symbolizes that level of devotion and dedication that we put into something. And in this case, it's in Leo, so it's really about our heart. And I've seen someone that I know, there's a number of things going on in this individual's chart, but the other things that are shorter cycles, which is Venus in Leo and Vesta in Leo, and this particular individual has Venus in Leo, so they're having a Venus return as well. But I've seen this incredible change in this person's life relative to this person being able to to share what's in their heart, and it's not something they've previously been able to do. I think the Vesta in Leo has really aided to that process for this particular individual. So that's just one example, keeping it very short, because there's a lot of details to that story which go into other elements of the chart, such as a Chiron return and things of that nature as well. Okay, so Mercury's in Libra. It will go retrograde in about a month's time, as I said. Saturn's still retrograde, will go direct in about a week's time. Pluto about a week after that. Jupiter's already gone direct. Uranus recently went direct. Mars is direct and will be in the sign of Aries until January next year, which is just phenomenal, actually, for Mars to be in one sign for that long. Neptune's still retrograde. I think it's going to be amazing when Pluto and Saturn actually finally go direct. There's going to be a very powerful shift, and I'm going to come back to talk about what that means in a different video. So I'm going to leave it here. I just wanted to just share a couple of comments and ideas. Hopefully they're inspiring for you. And see you guys very, very soon. I hope you had a really beautiful new moon in Virgo. I certainly did. I was really just really embodied this new moon in Virgo. I did just totally Virgo things, all around health and exercise and foods, and a lot of it I didn't even think about, wasn't planned. It just naturally all came together and was just focused and sort of born out of this energy of this new moon in Virgo, which has been really, really positive. And remember that new moon in Virgo was trine Saturn, exactly trine Saturn and Pluto, and widely trine Jupiter. But the exact trine was to Saturn. And we give Saturn a hard time because he's a really hard guy to deal with. When he comes knocking on your door, you can't say no to him, you know. And he's hard work. But on the other hand, when you have a trine aspect with Saturn, you're really getting a lot of support around what you're trying to structure, you know. And so even just for that day of the new moon, you know, Saturn trining that moon, I felt a tremendous support from Saturn's energy that particular day. I was able to be really disciplined with what I was trying to do, you know. Anyway, it's just really interesting. And just one other thing I want to leave you with, which is an interesting thought, and it's not just a thought, it's actually true, but I don't know if you've ever thought about it like this. So when you see a person who has had a real stroke of luck, right, in some kind of way, and you sort of look at them and you think, wow, gee, you know, how lucky is that? Well, what a stroke of luck that was for some kind of thing that happened, right? Well, it's not that the person is lucky or they were lucky. That's what a trine aspect is. So a trine means that you're in the right place at the right time for what's coming to you, and so it just flows with no effort at all, and it just comes naturally and gracefully, and it feels like luck because no effort has gone into it. It just gracefully appears. That's what happens when we have trine aspects, whether in our natal chart or whether through transit. So just keep that in mind. Okay, see you guys really soon. Much love and much blessings, and thank you so much for your love and support and for listening. Bye for now.